We are tracking double trouble as two new winter storms are now beginning to take shape. I will be explaining who can expect snow and ice in today's video. Welcome in, folks. A happy Sunday to you, November 30th. We are certainly ending the month on a very snowy, icy, and cold note for many of us. And I must tell you, a new area is going to get in on some of that winter weather over the coming days, followed by another storm I have my eyes on for about a week from now. That second system could once again bring snow and ice farther south. So we have a great deal to discuss in today's video and a lot to break down for you, which is precisely what we will be doing. If you are new to our channel, I want to extend a warm welcome. My name is Gerald, and I am a meteorologist at WCCB in Charlotte. If you have not yet had the chance, I invite you to like the video and subscribe so you can receive the latest updates. Doing so is a wonderful help. It will keep you weather-wise and well-informed. It is completely free and does not cost a penny. It is simply an excellent way to stay current with the ever-changing weather data and my analysis of it. All right, let's not waste any time today. Let us get right into the forecast. Next to me is the latest forecast from our European computer model, which we sometimes call the King Euro or Old Reliable. That is one of the reasons I am showing it to you. However, please do not be mistaken. We do have some disagreement between this model and some others that we will be discussing throughout the video today. But in any case, the European model is showing a winter storm beginning for some folks right now and evolving especially into tomorrow and then into your Tuesday and Wednesday, followed by another system. You can see it right here moving south and beginning to develop by this next upcoming weekend, which is the first full weekend of December. So this active pattern is continuing. I have been telling you for weeks now that I believe December will be quite a cold and snowy month for many areas. The end of November has already started that process, and December certainly looks to carry it on with what is to come. Now, looking at the current conditions, we already have the remnants of one winter storm. You may recall the significant amount of snowfall we received over the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. If you saw snow, please let me know how much you received in the comments section. I would love to hear those reports from places like Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, or anywhere else that saw the snow. That snow is now moving up into the interior Northeast. You can see it is snowing quite steadily in portions of northern Maine today, as well as in Vermont, New Hampshire, upstate New York, and even down toward parts of Pennsylvania. We have some leftover lake effect snow back in Michigan and some good old-fashioned rain along the Interstate 95 corridor and down into the southeast. I will tell you, though, that a lot of folks who are seeing rain right now will likely have a chance of getting snowfall with our next storm as cold air begins to dive in behind this one. That will be one of the major topics we will discuss next. Speaking of that next storm, here it is. You can see it is already getting organized over the Four Corners region. We have got snow out towards the Rockies. It is falling in Salt Lake City, back down into Cedar City, Utah, and even down into Monticello. There it is beginning to develop. Now, where does it go from here and who gets the snow? Well, that is an excellent question. You can see the process that is going to unfold here on our upper level map. You can see we have a trough of low pressure now digging down into the Rockies with a well-defined spin associated with it. That spin over the Four Corners region is what is helping to create some of that lift in the atmosphere, allowing that low pressure to develop. Eventually, this will kick eastbound, and you can see it work its way through the southern plains, through the Ohio Valley, with a great deal of spin working through the northeast. There will be a lot of energy with this system by the time we get into this coming Tuesday. This means the low pressure system is going to be strengthening and snowfall totals are going to be rising. Let me time it all out for you. Our current storm is beginning to move out. You can see that on our latest high resolution rapid refresh model, and I truly do mean the very latest. This information has just become available. So you are seeing the most current data as it works its way out of here. But you will start to notice our next storm beginning to arrive. It will move out of the Rockies and into the Central Plains, showing a band of snow developing over Kansas and portions of Nebraska. We could even see some icing back down towards Oklahoma as early as tomorrow morning for your Monday. So please be careful of that. I also expect we could even see some light freezing rain, sleet, and perhaps a bit of a wintry mix down into Little Rock and other portions of Arkansas. However, it looks like it will be mainly snow up into Kansas and central and northern Missouri. We could see some ice down into the Ozarks. For areas out there, though, this is going to be more of a quick-hitting event. I would call it a light to moderate winter weather event, nothing that you have not seen before. But it will still bring impacts, so it is important to keep that in mind. By your Monday afternoon and evening, snow will begin to spread into portions of Iowa. Chicago is once again expecting snowfall. Hopefully, you have your Christmas tree up by now if you missed out on the last storm, because this one will definitely bring those festive feelings. We could even see some snow. It could reach into southern Wisconsin. Then by the time you get into overnight Monday and the very early morning hours of Tuesday, approaching the midnight hour, it will be snowing in Indianapolis and really much of the state of Indiana and Illinois. We have a bit of a wintry mess here, even down into the Ozarks of Arkansas, getting close to a wintry mix in Memphis, but I believe it will stay mostly north of the city. To start, it could begin as rain. And then perhaps the cold air will catch up to that rain and change things over. By the time we get well into the early morning hours of your Tuesday, take a look at that rain-snow line. It is trying to crash south as another shot of cold air catches up to our low-pressure system, which is now developing down near the Gulf coastline. And because of that, it could start as a bit of a battleground in places like Louisville, but I think it will change over to a moderate, wet snowfall. We will likely see those big snowflakes as well with a setup like this. Now, that means this is going to be a rather heavy snow, so we are going to need to watch for some power outages. It is going to be quite heavy. The weight will be a concern for some of those power lines, so please keep that in mind through Indiana, Ohio, and into Kentucky. You can see as the storm begins to develop, it starts to move up the Appalachian chain by 5 in the morning on Tuesday. It will be a washout for Atlanta, Greenville, Spartanburg, and Charlotte. It is going to be a very cold rainfall to start your Tuesday, so be sure to get the jackets ready. You are going to want to start the car and let it defrost a little bit. It will not be icy down there, but it will be plenty cold enough. You are certainly going to feel it as you walk out the door. We could see some ice, though, in the mountains of North Carolina and into the mountains of the Virginias. It will be all snow in Ohio and starting to snow in Pittsburgh by Tuesday morning and into the afternoon. And then it is going to be a very close call if you are watching in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. You could start as a bit of an icy mix and then switch over to that blue, which signifies snowfall. It will be changing over to snow on the backside of the storm through much of Kentucky and into Pikeville. Nashville could even get some back-end snow. That would not surprise me. We would not see large snowfall totals there. But nonetheless, it could happen. It will be all rain for the Carolinas and Virginia, outside of, again, the higher terrains, where it could start as ice before changing over to some good old-fashioned rain. As I said, though, the Interstate 95 corridor will perhaps start as a quick icy mix and then change over to rain, I think, for Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. The farther north you go, though, the tougher the forecast becomes along that rain-snow line. I think it will be all snow in places like Scranton, Harrisburg, State College, the Finger Lakes, the Catskills, and the Adirondacks. New York City could start as a wintry mix, then transition to some rainfall. As we keep this going, it looks like mainly rain for Long Island, though it could start as a wintry mix and then perhaps change back from rain near the coastline. That includes the coasts of Connecticut and Rhode Island. I will tell you where the forecast is most tricky, however. It is right in this area, covering Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, southern Vermont, and New Hampshire. That is where we start to see some pretty significant differences in our model data as to where that rain-snow line ends up, and you will see that here in just a moment. I also think, though, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, especially the down east areas of Maine, this could be a pretty significant winter storm for you, at least for early season standards here during the first couple of days of December. Let's switch over to the NAM model now because it goes out far enough in time that we can actually use it. The NAM is picking up on that quite well. I think a very heavy band of snow is going to develop here, or at least a moderate to heavy band right along that rain-snow line on the colder side. And if I had to pick an area that is in a very good position right now, it would be western and central Massachusetts and extreme southern Vermont and New Hampshire. You look to be in a good spot. As we move this forward in time, the down east areas of Maine are looking quite snowy for your Tuesday afternoon and your Tuesday evening. Boston, Hartford, Providence, this is such a challenging forecast here regarding exactly where that rain-snow line ends up. I believe you will probably see rain at some point during this event, but you could start as snow and you might even try to end as snow. Some of our data, though, keeps you as snow almost the entire time, including some of our more reliable data. With that said, let us dive into the potential snowfall totals here and break this down a little more in depth for you. All right, let us get into the important details. Potential snowfall and ice totals. We will start with a blend of the models, which I think is doing a respectable job here, showing that band of snow developing for your Monday afternoon. It could produce a good 2 to 4 inches from Chicago through southern Iowa and into northern Missouri. For areas south of there, towards St. Louis, southern Illinois, and southern Indiana, it will probably be more of a 1 to 3 inch event. That is just the blend of models, though. Also, on the western shores of Michigan, you have lake effect snow ongoing now. You could add more snow on top of that, which is potentially on the way. It has been a very snowy start to the year for you. Looking out that way, if you look at the European model, that is what I am going to compare things to. I will show you the blend, and then I will show you the Euro, just so we can see where some things might not line up. The European model is just lower on the totals in general, but it does have that band of snow up here into northern Missouri, into northern Illinois as well, and southern Iowa. But generally speaking, you can see that I believe the blend of models is a pretty fair bet here to make for a nice, good, light to moderate snow event in this part of the country. As you go farther south into the Ohio Valley, I think we will see pretty good snowfall totals in Louisville. I would expect 1 to 3 inches there. The same thing goes for Cincinnati. The farther south you go into Kentucky, however, with less cold air available, you are more likely to experience rain, though it could end as snow once that colder air arrives. So please be watchful for a brief dusting of up to an inch across the rest of the state on the back end of this system. The more significant totals will be found up in Ohio, where much of the state can expect 1 to 3 or even 2 to 4 inches of snow. For our friends further south in Tennessee, it is a very similar situation, with mostly rain in the forecast. A quick dusting on the tail end of this system would certainly not be a surprise. Now, if we look at the European model, which I have right here, it is a little more optimistic about snow on the backside. As you can see, it predicts perhaps 1 to 2 inches right through the very heart of Kentucky. Some of that snowfall even attempts to push down into the Nashville area, so that model is certainly a bit more assertive. Still, I believe the blended forecast is a very fair assessment. Now, what about the potential for ice? How much can we expect from this? I am keeping a very close eye on central Arkansas, particularly the Little Rock area. We could see a quick glaze, up to 1/10 of an inch, as this event begins tomorrow morning. Please be very careful if you have any plans outdoors in the morning. We could see some very icy patches, especially on bridges and overpasses, so it is important to keep that in mind. This is not expected to be a major ice storm, and we are not anticipating widespread power outages. Just be aware that conditions could certainly become slick to start your day tomorrow. Moving on to the northeast, this is where the forecast becomes more interesting, and we begin to see some differences among the models. Here is the blended model forecast. You will notice a very sharp dividing line, which is quite typical this time of year with winter storms. For Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore, not a great deal is showing up. While some models do predict a little snow, the much better totals on this blended forecast are found up toward Scranton and into the Hudson Valley. This includes western and central Massachusetts, the downeast areas of Maine, and into southern Vermont and New Hampshire. This corridor that I have circled is where the models are focusing the bullseye of the storm. It still indicates an average of 2 to 4 inches for Boston, and then, as you can see, we begin to see very sharp gradients. The Connecticut coastline will receive almost nothing, but as you travel further north into Massachusetts, isolated spots could receive nearly 1/2 foot of snowfall. This is what the blended model is indicating at this time. For New York City, it is a similar story, with not a great deal of accumulation expected. Once you head north of the city, you begin to see higher amounts. However, that is just the blended forecast. Let's now examine some other models, including the European. That particular model has a slightly different solution that it has held to quite firmly for the last couple of days. Here is the brand new afternoon run of the European model, and it tells a completely different story for some areas. Take a look at this. It is forecasting nearly a foot of snow for northern Rhode Island and about half a foot for the Boston area. If you recall the blended models, that is an entirely different outlook. We are certainly seeing some notable differences in the models. Therefore, I do not want you to look at the blended forecast and assume that is exactly what will happen. Now, the blend is a very useful forecast tool because it averages everything together, which helps to minimize potential errors. However, there are some solutions, like the European model, that suggest a much more exciting event for folks in southern New England, with almost half a foot of snow across much of Connecticut. As I mentioned, for Rhode Island, at least the northern half of the state, it is showing significant snowfall totals. It also suggests a good half a foot for Boston and actually shifts the heaviest snow further to the south. This would mean it would be a less significant storm for the down east areas and southern Vermont and New Hampshire. They would still receive a respectable 3 to 5 inches, mind you. However, you would see fewer totals of half a foot or more in those northern areas. This model also shows a heavy band of snow moving into northern New Jersey. If you are located north of Interstate 80 in New Jersey, the European model is forecasting half a foot. And just 50 miles north of Philadelphia, up into the suburbs, it indicates a solid 2 to 4 inch snowfall. There is still not much predicted for New York City or Philadelphia, and perhaps only a little more down toward Baltimore. But in either case, for areas down here, I am not anticipating a major event from this system. From Philadelphia, and we will even say from New York City southward, along Interstate 95, you could certainly see some winter weather, but it is just not shaping up to be a significant storm. Could the next one be significant? We shall have to wait and see. I do see another system on the horizon, but there is still plenty to figure out with that one. Here's another model to consider, the Canadian model. I believe the Canadian forecast is probably the safer bet at this moment. It shows heavy snow for central and western Massachusetts, southern Vermont, and New Hampshire, with some isolated spots potentially receiving a foot. Now, that may be a bit on the high side, but I do think that is where the bullseye of this storm will ultimately be, and it shows considerably less for Boston. And unfortunately, for those of you in Boston, I believe that is the more probable scenario. Now, could you get a quick burst of snow at the onset and accumulate a couple of inches? Yes, that is definitely possible. I just believe a wedge of warmer air will take over in many of these cities during the middle of the storm. However, you could begin as snow and also end as snow. It is that period in the middle of the storm that becomes less wintry. The GFS model appears to be something of a blend between the Canadian and the European models, and it helps to clarify the picture. It is a very sharp cutoff, folks. This means you could get almost nothing in Rhode Island, while just a short distance away in central Massachusetts, there could be a foot of snow. That is simply the nature of winter weather systems in this region, and as I said, I believe the blended model is a reasonable forecast. If I had to choose one of the operational models, I would say the Canadian is likely the closest, but we must keep an eye on the European model. It has been very consistent with its forecast, so please do not rule out a scenario like this, where some of us further south and east might get a very nice surprise from this system. As for ice, I am not expecting a great deal of it. We could, however, start with a little bit of icing. I believe areas further south, toward West Virginia, and western Maryland, could see more of a glaze, up to 1/10 of an inch or more of ice. For the Northeast, a light glaze would likely be the worst case scenario. All right, that covers the upcoming storm. We have probably spent more than enough time on that one. Let's move on and give you a very quick preview of another storm that could be on the horizon and what it may have in store for us. Well, this active pattern of energy continues, and cold air is also going to continue to push into the eastern United States. It will arrive in waves, and the real question simply becomes where the cold air will line up with that energy. Who will be in the overlapping area? Well, let us take a look. By Wednesday, and this is really during the overnight hours from Tuesday into Wednesday, our northeast storm will be in progress. That is the system that will produce the potential impacts we just discussed. After that, another piece of energy arrives, another trough of low pressure diving down into the Rockies. This is really round 3. We had the major storm a couple of days ago. We have this next one approaching, and then we have another one following that.
I can see it developing by next weekend, starting once again in the Rockies, dive into the south, and then the energy will be pulled eastward with cold air lurking just to the north. Now here's the challenge, folks. The main thing we will need to determine is where precisely the rain-snow line will set up with this system. Again, I think it is going to be quite a challenge to forecast. Let me show you a couple of the models. Here are the GFS and the European models. We can examine their differences and their points of agreement. There is the energy. As you see, there is a great deal of rain down south along the Gulf Coast, and we have cold high pressure to the north, which helps to draw down that cooler air. Now, if this were January, this would be an ideal setup for snow and ice along the Interstate 85 corridor in the southeast. That would affect places like Atlanta, Greenville, Spartanburg, and Charlotte. However, it is early December, not quite February. I am certainly not planning on time traveling, but because of that, we have a little less cold air than we would typically expect during the heart of winter. So, regarding the GFS model, let me begin with this important note. This is not a formal forecast, especially for all my friends in Charlotte who might watch this and begin telling everyone a snowstorm is coming this weekend. That is not my forecast, and I highly doubt we will see that outcome. Nevertheless, the GFS model does show that cold air moving into place, which could create a classic winter weather event for the southeast north of Interstate 85.
It shows snow for the mountains and the foothills, particularly north of Interstate 40. It suggests a wintry mix is probable along the Interstate 85 corridor, making it a southeast and mid-Atlantic winter weather event. It may not be a full-blown storm, but it then brings some light precipitation up into the northeast, followed by an entirely separate clipper system in about 7 to 8 days from now.
That is the scenario that the GFS model presents. Unfortunately, the GFS has a tendency to overdo these types of events from time to time. Here is the European model. Now, I will completely agree that the European model shows both the energy and the cold air are present. The question is, does the cold air get far enough south for southeastern cities like Charlotte and Greensboro to experience winter weather? Right now, that appears to be a less likely scenario. It is not impossible, but it is less likely. The European model is showing a very cold rain. I say cold rain because I probably should not use the term freezing rain, as that is its own specific phenomenon. How about a very cold rain? It is forecasting rain with temperatures between 35 and 40 degrees for Charlotte, Greenville, and Spartanburg. It does, however, bring some snow to the mountains of North Carolina. I believe that part is very plausible from a climatological standpoint. It also shows another snow event right in the Ohio Valley. To my friends in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, I hope you are not yet tired of the snow, as it has certainly been an active start to your winter. This model depicts a winter weather event for the Appalachian chain and another northeast winter storm, but with a completely different track, a different intensity, and an entirely different scenario.
Really, all we know for certain about this storm at this point is that we will have the energy and we will have the cold air. The question is, for whom will they align? As usual, the best thing to look at is the ensemble data. So, let's conclude by taking a look at those charts to see who has the best chance of seeing winter weather by next weekend. All right, as always, this shows the probability of seeing accumulating snowfall within a 24-hour period.
What does it show? Well, we are going to focus on that final storm that we have been discussing today. This is for the coming Thursday. That is when this is slated to begin, at least for this coming Thursday. Then, heading into the weekend, the chances for snow are once again looking good down in the Four Corners region. Here comes the system, with a pretty good chance for snow once again in Kansas, Oklahoma, and the state of Missouri. I said Missouri's as if they were more than one, but you get the point. The signal extends down into the Ohio Valley, and then it does show a signal, in fact a respectable one, down into what we will call the foothills of North Carolina, specifically north of Interstate 40. That signal then continues up into the western portions of Virginia and West Virginia itself. There is a signal there for sure, and that signal also appears for the northeast. Please keep in mind, the primary forecast model was not showing much activity. The collection of models, however, indicates a good possibility of snow for many of the same areas currently in the forecast,
with higher chances this time for the Interstate 95 corridor than our current storm, except for perhaps Boston, where again, the outcome is quite uncertain. You can see that pattern working its way through.
So this system is certainly appearing in the European forecast model and its related projections. It is simply a matter of determining for which specific locations, at least for the finer details. But this gives us a general idea. Regarding the American family of models, you can see the system arriving. The Four Corners region receives some winter weather, and then frankly, these models are somewhat disappointing for those of you who love snow. I mean, even along the Interstate 85 corridor, where the main forecast showed snow into South Carolina, there is only about a 5 to 10% chance of that actually materializing. It just does not seem very likely at this time for our friends that far south. However, for places such as Greensboro, Asheville, and Boone, and areas to the north, I could certainly see this developing into a significant winter weather event, particularly regarding the potential for ice. If we look at the European prediction system, you can see, and actually this is not the precise map I wanted to share with you. Let me go to, here it is. This is the correct one. This map shows the chances of freezing rain from Monday into Tuesday. As I mentioned, we could see some freezing rain. And then you can see the indications for this event become stronger. There is some potential for this southern region, although the chances have decreased slightly since yesterday. As I said, I believe the Piedmont Triad area up into Blacksburg, Virginia, Boone, portions of West Virginia, and northward along the spine of the Appalachian Mountains have a much higher chance of seeing winter weather from this system. For Charlotte, I would place the probability at about a 10 to 20% chance right now that any freezing rain or ice would occur next weekend. For Greenville and Spartanburg, we will keep that estimate about the same. It is unlikely to happen in Atlanta, and for Columbia, it does not appear to be in the path of this one, but we will continue to monitor the situation closely and keep you informed. But that is what I am seeing at this moment, folks. That is the latest data and all the information I have for you. I have a couple of final thoughts. We have covered quite a bit of information today. I will be hosting a live broadcast later this evening as you are watching this, potentially starting at 6 o'clock in the evening Eastern Time. We are going to provide a detailed analysis of the winter storm that is occurring over the next couple of days and offer another preview of the one for next week. And I will be joined by BGWX once more. If you watched our last live stream, you will remember him. He is a true expert when it comes to weather in the Northeast. So if you are in that region and you want to know what Boston might see, or some of those areas where we have a challenging forecast, I encourage you to join us this evening. It will be an excellent opportunity to get that kind of information, or you can always watch the recording after the fact. It should be available by about 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, Eastern Time. All right, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. Please stay safe. And for those of you hoping for snow, we will certainly keep watching the models for you. I look forward to speaking with all of you again this evening.